One of Christianity's fundamental claims is that Jesus is the Messiah, the anticipated liberator and king of Israel. The claim goes back to the early days of the Jesus movement. See, for example, John 4:25-26, which portrays a conversation between Jesus and a Samaritan woman. The woman says, "I know that Messiah is coming," and Jesus responds, "I who speak to you am he." Now, Christian apologists attempt to demonstrate that Jesus is the Messiah by claiming that he fulfilled Messianic prophecies that appear in the Hebrew Scriptures. Although Christian apologists can't seem to agree to the precise number of such prophecies, they generally agree that there are many of them. Moreover, apologists believe that Christianity's legitimacy rides on Jesus having fulfilled these prophecies. In his book, The Case for the Real Jesus, apologist Lee Strobel writes, "When a Samaritan woman said to him, 'I know the Messiah is coming,' Jesus replied, 'I who speak to you am he.' Having made these unambiguous claims, if he then fails to match the prophetic portrait, Jesus would be an impostor, worthy of rejection and disdain, a false prophet who should be rejected by Jews and Gentiles alike." The fatal flaw here is that the so-called Messianic Prophetic portrait is largely a Christian fiction that, among other things, regularly relies on fabricated prophecies as well as tendentious misquotations and misapplications of passages from the Hebrew Scriptures. These antics betray the fact that Jesus was not the Messiah. Okay, first, fabricated prophecies. 3 examples. A, Matthew 2:23, which claims that young Jesus and his family came to reside in Nazareth so, quote, "that which was spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He shall be called a Nazarene." The words, "he shall be called a Nazarene," do not appear in the Hebrew Scriptures. In fact, neither the city of Nazareth nor anyone from Nazareth is ever mentioned anywhere in the Old Testament. It's just not there. B, Matthew 27:9-10. Judas regretted his participation in getting Jesus arrested. Earlier, we're told that the chief priests had paid Judas 30 pieces of silver to do the deed. Now in chapter 27, he is depicted trying to return the silver. He eventually throws it into the temple and goes off to kill himself. The chief priests decide to use the silver to purchase a potter's field, a cemetery for unknown and indigent people. Matthew 27:9-10 proclaims, quote, "Then that which was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one whose price had been set by the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me." Sounds impressive. The problem? Well, the footnote for Matthew 27:9-10 in the New American Bible puts it well. Quote, "Matthew's attributing this text to Jeremiah is puzzling. There is no such text in that book." The purported prophecy is not in Jeremiah. Christian apologists have offered various excuses for this, including, without limitation, the prophecy was in Jeremiah, but the Jews cut it out. The prophecy was in a writing by Jeremiah that no one has and that no longer exists. The author of Matthew had a bad memory, or it was the ancient equivalent of a typo. And my personal favorite, the prediction was spoken by Jeremiah, but never written down. While creative, this last one withers under the mildest scrutiny. Matthew uses the same formulation 20 times, 18 of which refer to texts that can be found in some form in the Hebrew Scriptures. As for the other 2, this and the bit about "he shall be called a Nazarene," they're not in the Hebrew Scriptures at all. They're Christian fabrications. Now, some apologists eagerly point to Zechariah 11:10-13 as the source of the purported prophecy. Two problems. First, Zechariah is not Jeremiah. Second, the passage in Zechariah doesn't say what the author of Matthew says. C. John 2:17. In the four verses immediately preceding this, we're presented with one of the three different times the Gospels portray Jesus clearing the Jewish temple. According to the author of John, upon seeing Jesus do this, quote, his disciples remembered that it is written, zeal for your house will consume me. Christian apologists regularly include this among the purportedly fulfilled messianic prophecies. Here's the problem. While the text appears in Psalm 69:9, zeal for your house consumes me, it's not a messianic prophecy. Moreover, even if it were a messianic prophecy, it presents a major problem for traditional Christology, which holds that Jesus was sinless. The person praying in Psalm 69 is a sinner. Verse 5, O Elohim, you know my foolishness, and my sins are not hidden from you. Unless Christian apologists want to say that Jesus was a foolish sinner, they can't claim Psalm 69 as a prophetic reference to him. Second, misquoted and misapplied passages from the Hebrew Scriptures. Three examples. A. Matthew 2:14-15. Mary and Joseph take the baby Jesus and flee from Herod into Egypt, where they remain until after Herod's death. So the author of Matthew claims, quote, what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled, saying, out of Egypt did I call my son. It seems impressive until one checks the source, Hosea 11:1, which has God saying, quote, when Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The author of Matthew ripped half of Hosea 11:1 from its context, a lament about Israel, and misapplied it as if it were a messianic prophecy. B. Matthew 1:22-23. An angel tells Joseph that his wife, a virgin, was made pregnant by God, and that the son she will have is to be named Jesus. The author of Matthew says, quote, now all this took place that what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet might be fulfilled, saying, behold, the virgin shall be with child, and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. The prophet invoked here is Isaiah, specifically Isaiah 7:14, which says, quote, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the young woman will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. Let's put the passages side by side. Notice the difference with respect to the child's name. Isaiah clearly says the child's mother will name him, and Emmanuel will be his name. By contrast, Matthew has an unidentified they, calling the child Emmanuel. Of course, the author of Matthew had to modify the passage because, as we saw, he had an angel directing Joseph to name Mary's child Jesus, a direction Joseph obeyed. So Matthew changes it from Isaiah's third person feminine singular, she will call, to the third person plural, they shall call. Now, some Christians might say that Matthew must have been looking at the Septuagint, and he got the they from there. But the Septuagint's version of Isaiah 7:14 is the same as the original Hebrew. She will call his name Emmanuel. The author of Matthew changed the Isaiah passage. We've seen the author of Matthew fabricate a prophecy about the Messiah being from Nazareth, misquote a passage from Hosea to make it seem to be about Jesus, and attribute a prophecy to Jeremiah that isn't in Jeremiah. Now we see him changing the wording of Isaiah 7:14. Is this truly the prophetic portrait that is supposed to be so impressive? I'll pick this up in part 2.